Good afternoon, everyone. Today is June 27th, 2023. It's 3 p.m. This is the City of Prescott voting meeting. We'll start with introductions and announcements, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think I see any introductions out there, although, Don Michaelman, Chairman of Planning and Zoning. Hi, Mr. Chairman. So announcements. We are now in stage 1 fire restrictions as of just a few moments ago, which means no residential burn permits will be issued. Use of model rockets is prohibited. Use of fireworks or other pyrotechnic displays are prohibited except upon approval of a pyrotechnics permit. No smoking outside of vehicles, outside of residential yards, or outside of designated smoking areas. No outdoor use of firearms. Cooking, warming, or campfires, ash or ember producing, are allowed at single and multifamily residential properties and town parks where approved, but must be attended at all times. So that's the fire restriction announcement. In addition to that, the City of Prescott Fire Department and Prescott Fire Department agencies and organizations from around the state will remember the Granite Mountain Hotshots with commemorative events and activities to mark the 10th anniversary of the tragedy. Wednesday, June 28th at 2023 at 11:30 a.m. there will be a Hotshot tribute mural reveal at the Prescott Chamber of Commerce, 117 West Goodwin. Artist Katja von Kral, I think I'm saying that right, with the TV show The Reveal, is unveiling a tribute mural to the Hotshots, which will reside on the side of the Chamber building facing Montezuma Street. Thursday, June 29th, 2023 at 11:30 a.m., the Hotshot Learning and Tribute Center will celebrate its 5th birthday, featuring comments from Prescott Fire Chief Holger Dura and Mayor Phil Good, and a performance by the Central Arizona Pipe and Drum Corps. Surviving Hotshot Brendan McDonough will be on hand to sign his book. The center is located at Prescott Gateway Mall, 3250 Gateway Boulevard. Friday, June 30th at 3 p.m. will be the public commemoration south side of the courthouse square. Officials from around the state will be in attendance. Former Hotshot Brandon McDonough will deliver the Hotshot prayer, and Ryder Ashcroft, the son of one of the fallen Hotshots, will deliver brief remarks. The ceremony will conclude with a ringing of the courthouse bells and a flyover from Luke Air Force Base. Following the ceremony, Yavapai County courthouse bells will ring 19 times at 4:42 p.m. in honor of the fallen heroes. The commemoration will take place on Goodwin Street between Montezuma and Cortez. Some great events are also taking place this week. The world's oldest rodeo starts Wednesday night with the first of 8 performances. On Friday, June 30th at 9 a.m., the Kiwanis Kitty Parade takes place on Cortez Street, finishing at the courthouse steps. On Saturday, July 1st at 9 a.m., the Frontier Days Parade, which goes throughout the downtown area. On the Frontier Days Arts and Crafts Show takes place Saturday and Sunday, July 1 and 2nd. Saturday, July 1st will also be Prescott's annual fireworks celebration at Watson Lake. We're celebrating 4th of July a few days early, because why not? For more information about local events, go to experienceprescott.com. Also, the city, I already read that. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll now have a invocation by Bruce Nealand with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Granite Dells Ward, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance conducted by Councilman Moore.
Is this on? Dear God, our Father in heaven, we assemble ourselves here this afternoon at this city council meeting and beseech thee and pray for thy blessings to be upon those who serve us as council members and elected representatives, and pray that those who have business before this council will be able to express their views and opinions and desires with clarity and with humility and with civility. Father, we're grateful indeed for this free country which we're about to celebrate the birth of this coming week. We're grateful for the beautiful city in which we live and for the harmony with which we're blessed, and that we pray that we can preserve with all our might and mind. We're grateful for all good things in our life and give thanks unto thee for them. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic which stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Good,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Montoya,
Here.
Councilwoman Kentelmi,
Here.
Councilman Moore,
Here.
Councilman Sishka,
Here.
Councilman Tenney,
Yes, ma'am.
and the record will reflect that Councilmember Rusing is excused from the meeting.
We'll now have the presentation of a proclamation honoring the 10th anniversary of the Granite Mountain Hot Shots tragedy. I know John Marsh is here. Is there anyone else that would like to receive this proclamation? Please join me up in the front. Well, this is certainly a monumental week. So this proclamation is to the Granite Mountain Hot Shots. June 30th, 2023 will be the Granite Mountain Hot Shots Day. Whereas on June 30th, 2013, 19 members of the Granite Mountain Interagency Hot Shot crew lost their lives battling the Yarnell Hill fire. Whereas we remember our 19 brave heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice performing their duty to protect lives and property, and whereas we remember our fallen heroes by name: Andrew Ashcraft, Robert Caldwell, Travis Carter, Dustin DeFord, Christopher McKenzie, Eric Marsh, Grant McKee, Sean Misner, Scott Norris, Wade Parker, John Person Jr., Anthony Rose, Jesse Steed, Joe Thurston, Travis Turbeville, William Billy Warnicki, Clayton Whitted, Kevin Wojcik, and Garrett Zuppinger. Whereas we also honor surviving member Brandon McDonough, and whereas the city extends heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, and associates of the fallen heroes. And whereas the city of Prescott, Prescott Fire Department, and agencies and organizations from around the state have worked to remember the Granite Mountain Hot Shots with commemorative events and activities to mark the 10th anniversary of the tragedy. And whereas the city of Prescott would like to formally recognize and thank all of those individuals who worked so hard to create a 10th commemorative event to honor and remember the fallen heroes and honor their memory for their families and the community. And whereas the city of Prescott does hereby proclaim June 30th to be Granite Mountain Hot Shots Day, whereas our fallen heroes will never be forgotten. Now, therefore, the city of Prescott does hereby proclaim June 30th to be Granite Mountain Hot Shots Day.
We have a challenge coin at the center that has the inscription on it that says, "We will never forget because we remember every day." The 10th remembrance marks a milestone, of course, since the tragedy. And I'd like to thank the city of Prescott for their concern and how they are honoring the families and the hot shots that gave all. Thank you all.
It's a distinct privilege to have us take a time out and remember a sacrifice that will never be forgotten in this community. It is without doubt that this was one of the most influential and shaping events in the city of Prescott in recent memory. However, it also is important that we understand that this will not define us. This is a proud part of our history, but we continue to move forward and integrate everything that's happened since that day. And this is definitely a testament, and I'm so glad the folks that are standing up here today were directly involved and impacted by these events, and it is wonderful to see them all here today. Thank you for taking the time out to be recognized.
All right, our next item on the agenda is a presentation on the Dolly Parton Imagination Library of the Prescott area.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is a presentation on the Imagination Library of the Prescott area, and we have Marty Reed here, the Assistant Superintendent with Prescott Unified School District, and Noel D'Souza. Did I say that right? I hope I did. I didn't?
No.
Oh, no. D'Souza, who is the board president of the Imagination Library, and they are here to provide information on the library's programs and activities.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, and City staff for having us here to give you an update regarding the Imagination Library of the Prescott area. It's tough to follow the recognition of that somber event 10 years ago, and it's very near and dear to all of us, including me. And I appreciate that you're going to shift gears, and like Chief Dura said, we do need to move forward. And I've also heard him say that this event did create community. And what we're about to present to you is something that helps our community, and I think you're going to be impressed. We presented almost 4 years ago. Steve probably remembers that presentation, and we want to give you an update of where we are today. So my name's Marty Reed. This is Noel D'Souza. We're both board members of the Imagination Library of the Prescott area. And do I have to point it at something? I thought that was a down arrow. If you don't know what the Dolly Parton Imagination Library is, it's a nonprofit organization that provides free books to children ages 0 to 5 on a monthly basis, mails them to their home. And we are an affiliate. We are the Imagination Library of the Prescott area, and we're an affiliate of the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So Dolly Parton's library maintains the database, selects the books, buys the books, mails the books, and provides support to the affiliates. What we do is we register the children ages 0 to 5, raise the money to pay for those books, which is $2.20 a month per child, so about $26 a year, to send 12 books in the mail to these young students. Well, they're not students yet, but they're going to be for Prescott Unified pretty soon. There's some important reasons for this early literacy from ages 0 to 5. We know that literacy is a huge indicator of academic success as they do come to us in our schools. And we see gaps in vocabulary as early as 18 months because literacy includes speaking and listening. So yes, these kiddos can't necessarily read the books yet, but they're hearing people read it, and they're acquiring vocabulary through that. So we know at ages 3 and 4, these are great predictors of their academic success. You've heard probably on TV many times at age 5, 90% of the child's brain is developed. That's before they get to school. And third grade reading ability is a big predictor of things like high school graduation, attendance at college, success in high school. And so what we're here to do is present this project, which can support early childhood literacy. So we modeled this program after the Verde Valley Imagination Library, which has been around for quite a while and is very successful. And so in September of 2019, we started the Imagination Library of the Prescott area. Those of you who were around then may remember that Billy Orr was our first president. Late council member Billy Orr was the first president of our affiliate, proud supporter of reading and Read on Prescott and reading literacy. And so we're here today to kind of talk to you about where we've come since September 2019 and ask for your support. Sit down.
Thanks, Marty. And as Marty said, this is kind of how we got started and what we've been up to over the last few years. I'm going to give an orientation to where we are now and where we hope to be going in the immediate future. As Marty indicated, initially we were administered by the Friends of the Prescott Public Library, Prescott zip codes only. And about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, in those zip codes, we were distributing 700 books to 700 families and children at a cost of about $1,500 a month. As of April of last year, we established ourselves as a separate 501c3, and we expanded to all the rest of Yavapai County that had not already been covered. In May of this year, last month, we were distributing 1,651 books per month at a cost of about $3,600. We expect our budget for this year, 2023, to be around $51,000, $52,000. Okay. Oops. Got to go backwards. This chart illustrates some of the numbers that I think are really important to consider. Dolly Parton has a pretty vast staff, amongst them some statisticians that can tell us where we are headed. And basically they indicate to us that we can eventually have about 60% of the 0 to 5 population involved in this program in any one municipality. And since we've been in Prescott now for 4 years, you can see the very first line there at the end of the line, 87% of that 60% is now being covered. The rest of Yavapai County that we cover has only been around for about a year or so, and so our percentages there are much less. But eventually, we can plan on having 3,865 children, 0 to 5, more or less, involved in this program in the areas of Yavapai County that we cover. And I've given you a sample of what they are, excluding Verde Valley, and also Baghdad has their own program. Where do I aim? Okay. This bar graph illustrates the numbers that I had just shown to you as far as our growth is concerned. We're currently serving about 1,700 children a month, costing us about $3,600 a month. And we continue to open this up to the rest of the county. And we have a high rate of growth, exponential growth, since we expanded to the rest of the county. According to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, it's expected that we will reach full eligibility more or less around December 2026, at which time we will be covering that 3,865 children. In order to support that, by that time, we're going to have a book budget of about $102,000 a year. Our financial support to date has come from a number of different resources. And we are very thankful that Read on Arizona through the state has provided us twice with leftover COVID money, so to speak, to the tune of about $57,000. And right now, we're in pretty good shape for the rest of this year and into the beginning months of 2024. Beyond that, we're really going to have to gear down for some real fundraising. The kinds of support that we have been pursuing most recently. The Rotary clubs were the initial support and continue to support this. All 3 Rotary clubs here in Prescott. Also, the Arizona Community Foundation, the Yavapai Community Foundation, United Way, private donations, corporate sponsors, and we do expect that we're going to have a serious fundraising event sometime in the early part of 2024. Listed here are some of the ways that individuals can support the Imagination Library as well as organizations. And if any of you are members of organizations that would like to hear more about the Imagination Library, please contact us. We can be contacted through the Prescott Public Library's website. It'll take you to our new website that we just developed. That's it? Okay, very good. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I was fortunate enough, my son was 3 when this program launched, so I had 2 years of him kind of building up the little library. I think it's a great program. I was proud to be part of the Prescott Frontier Rotary Club with Noel that was one of the clubs that helped bring us about, and I think it's a great program. I'm glad to get the update and see that it's being really well adopted in our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to say, full disclosure, Verde Valley Imagination Library is supported by municipalities with the financial support. And as you can see, we've expanded quite a bit in Prescott, and we would like to ask for support of the council at some point to continue this great program. As Noel said, we are funded through the end of 2024, but we want to keep it going forever for these kiddos. So we'd ask that you please consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noel, and thank you, Marty, for that. Councilman Tenney.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just appreciate the great program that people are helping build early literacy skills in kids. That's fantastic. I think there's a role for the city potentially to play in that in the future as a partner, for sure. And I love kind of the mindset, instead of people saying, why don't those schools do something about the kids? People saying, what can we do for kids? This is a great example of that. Thank you so much.
Very good. Any other questions or concerns? No, we'll move on to the open call to the public.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement. Residents may comment and address council regarding matters that are not included on the posted agenda during the call to the public. Please complete a green speaker card and submit it to me if you wish to speak prior to the meeting being convened. As a reminder, speakers are limited to 4 minutes, and the call to the public will be limited to 40 minutes in total, with the following stipulations. Citizens will be limited to addressing the council on the same topic only 4 times in total. If a topic has been addressed more than 5 times by different speakers, the mayor may limit future discussion on this topic, and topics of a primarily national concern may be limited at the discretion of the mayor. At this time, I have 1 green card, and that is from Mr. Larry Nelson.
Here a couple weeks ago requesting a little bit of help.
Mr. Nelson, please speak into the microphone.
So I was here a couple weeks ago requesting some additional help from Parks and Rec and support from you guys, and you guys came through. Trail looks great, even cleared out along the old mural. We had hundreds of people, about half from the area and about half mostly from the valley, come along the trail and visit and tell us what a gem we have. So not just what we're doing, just the whole trail system. So Thank you again.
That's all, Mayor.
Okay, at this point, we'll move to the consent agenda. Does any member of council want to pull any items off the consent agenda? Did you have one? No? No, then if no one wants to pull anything, then I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Mayor,
Are we voting now?
up on the screen. Vote. It's not popping up. Okay. So what we'll do then, since the screens are not populating, is everyone in favor can say aye. If anyone is opposed, you can say nay.
All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Very good. We'll move to the item 10 liquor license.
Public hearing and consideration for a Series 7 owner transfer beer and wine liquor license application from Eric Lyon Burton, applicant. No, I got it. Public hearing and consideration for an owner transfer Series 7 beer and wine bar liquor license application from Zachary Lyon Stanford, applicant for Soul Ride, location 230 South Montezuma Street. The application fees have been paid and the notice has been posted for the required 20 days. No public comments have been received.
Is the applicant present?
Hello. Good afternoon.
You wanted to describe your transfer of your license, and I know a lot of your customers appreciate the fact there's an opportunity after a long ride to quench their thirst.
Yes, it's a community gathering place with non-alcoholic beverages available as well. My husband Zach bought the shop from. He was a service manager from Kate and Sena. So yeah, we're just looking for the owner transfer for the Series 7 liquor license today. Yeah, we're 2 months in now, so hopefully we.
Very good. We wish you success with
Thank you.
This new opportunity to resurrect Soul Ride.
Thanks.
All right, I'll entertain a motion here.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. Please vote.
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor,
Aye.
raise your hand, say aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously.
Mayor, I move to approve recommendation for liquor license number 245339 for an owner transfer Series 7 beer and wine bar liquor license application for Soul Ride.
Second.
Motion is second. Please vote. Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll next go to the regular agenda item 11A.
Thank you, Mayor. Presentation and discussion regarding the 2023 legislative session with Barry Aarons.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do have Barry Aarons here, our city lobbyist. He's here today to provide a recap and summary of what has occurred during the 2023 legislative session. So, Barry.
Thank you, City Manager Gregory, Mayor, members of Council. It's always a pleasure to be here. I'd like to take just a second. I have two special guests with me today who came up with me, did a nice road trip. My wife, Jody Aarons, is here, and our granddaughter, Layla Hesser, is here. Layla, you want to stand up and wave, please? No. Okay. we're very excited to have her. And I said, nope, I'm not going to spend the whole afternoon away. I'd rather have her with me. So we're going to wander downtown and show her some of the cool shops and so on. I'd like to be able to say that I'm here to talk about the recently concluded legislative session, but as Yogi Berra used to say, it ain't over till it's over, and it ain't over yet. They decided on June 12th to recess again. It's the first time in my 53 years in this business that they've taken not one, not two, not three, but 4 spring breaks, or now we're on a summer break. The other thing is it's the first time in the history of the state that we've still been in regular session after June 30th. They busted through a precedent. I hope they return to take care of that precedent in the future, but I fear that this may be the new normal. They're coming back on July 31st. The purpose of that is threefold. Number one is they need to, well, up until yesterday, they needed to take care of some of the appointments of gubernatorial cabinet positions and some of the boards and commissions that have yet been approved that need to be populated. And unfortunately, yesterday was a little kerfluffle between the governor's executive order on who can prosecute abortion crimes, and I want to make sure that is stated correctly. And the chairman of the directors nominating committee, Senator Jake Hoffman, decided that he was going to suspend his because his belief that the governor's executive order was unconstitutional. So I don't know what's going to happen on July 31st, which is kind of like the way the whole session has gone. It's been a very strange session, a lot of new members. And you know, when a lot of new members are there, they have to get used to the process and they have to understand some of the nuances of how you go along. I'll give you one great example. I'm not going to mention the senator's name, but I had a senator who introduced some bills that kind of questionable. Why would you introduce these bills? And the response was, well, a constituent asked me. And on the last day before they took off, while I was working on, some of you are familiar, the Rio Verde water project for my other municipal client, Scottsdale, I talked to the member who said, you know, I learned something from working on this. And she did a really, really good job helping get that bill across the finish line. She says, I have to do more stakeholder work before I actually introduce bills because, and that's endemic to being a freshman legislator. And I think that that's important. I want to thank Tyler. You got a great intergov. I've worked with dozens of intergovs in my career, and I've never had one who is as responsive to requests as Tyler is. I commend him, and I think you should be proud of him. I want to thank city manager past and present, since they overlapped the session. And I also want to thank the city attorney, who also was available when we needed legal questions discussed. I want to talk just about a few several pieces of legislation that were the highest priority. I do have with me 14 pages worth of bills that I followed for the city of Prescott. Anybody suffering from insomnia, I'll be more than happy to loan you this.
You know, Barry, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Will Senator Hoffman's stated claim of the executive order being unconstitutional have to go through a charge in the Supreme Court or something, a rule on that?
I don't know the answer to that, Mayor. It's going to depend on whether they do want to file a suit. I will tell you that is a battle between two branches of government, and how that plays out, I don't know. I would suspect that before long you will probably see some litigation challenging that order, but that's just pure conjecture on my part. I want to talk about some of the priority bills that we followed and that I testified on your behalf. One was the food tax repeal. Would have cost us about $7 million. Testified 4 times on that. There was a lot of misinformation that was provided by the proponents of that, saying that we got this windfall of money, you know, because they raised the shared revenue from 15% to 19%. What they forgot to say in that was because we were going to be getting less revenue from shared revenue because of the flat tax that went into effect as of January 1st. So that did pass on purely partisan basis. but it was vetoed by the governor, and it's gone. The second one that is of interest, of course, financially, was the residential rental repeal. We were successful in getting the governor to veto that. Again, we testified on that. Some misinformation. We did the best we could, but it did pass, again, on a partisan basis, and the governor vetoed that. However, that issue came up again in the budget negotiations, and my understanding is that the governor did accede to the desire to get that done, and that bill did pass. But they haven't transmitted the bill to the governor yet, and the reason that they haven't is it's one of those things that they're kind of holding back because they don't want her to either sign it or veto it if she's going to claim, well, you haven't dealt fairly with me on Prop 400, which is the second reason they might come back. And that Prop 400, as you may remember, I know that our city manager was very familiar with Prop 400, and that's the Maricopa County road tax and transit tax that expires in 2025. So it needs to be renewed, and there was a bill that did pass that the governor vetoed because it didn't include the level of transit that she thought was necessary. Does not affect the city of Prescott, but it has gotten involved. And the problem in this business is sometimes a bill that doesn't affect your client at all winds up having an impact on your client because there are subsidiary issues or accoutrements that go with it that do affect us. So I suspect she will wind up eventually signing it. So that's going to cost us about just a little under $1 million for both the general fund and the road tax, I believe. But it's a delayed effective date of a couple of years, so we do have time to accommodate the loss of that revenue. Third is happy news, and that's the Glassford Dells project. I'm very happy to say we went through the right process. We had a bill introduced. I worked very closely with Representative Bliss and also the lobbyists for Prescott Valley on this. We got a good bill drafted based on the intergovernmental agreement that had been signed among Prescott Valley, and Yavapai County, and that bill passed the House. We did not need to get that bill in and of itself through the whole process. Demonstrating that it had a broad base of bipartisan support enabled us to get it included in the budget. The actual language of that bill and the money was included in the budget that passed on May 10th. So that's good news. Tyler and I have been working with the State Treasurer's Office to try to make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted to make sure that we get the right language in the IGA so that they can release the money that is due to us for that Prescott Glassford Dells project. Two other bills I wanted to mention. One is there was a bill that would have required police response times in 5 minutes. Those people who introduced that live in a major metropolitan area and have never been probably up in the Bradshaw Mountains, where if you call a police officer from somewhere on the extremes of our city limits, they will, it is physically impossible for them to get there in 5 minutes. So they're telling us that they're passing a law designed to make us violate the law. We negotiated on that, and we finally got it down to a study committee that would look at response times. Not a bad idea. Matter of fact, the sponsor had specifically asked that our police chief might be included in that committee. I can now tell you we can spare her the time commitment because that bill did not succeed in the Senate. It failed on a final vote in the Senate. I believe something like that will be back next year, but that's, again, pure conjecture. Lastly, I want to talk about affordable housing. Affordable housing is a problem that we all see throughout the state of Arizona. We understand it. We know it. There are things that we can and can't do, and there are extremes that you can do. You can appropriate billions of dollars and build large buildings. And let me tell you something. I grew up in New York City, and those were called the projects, and they created their own kinds of problems. But they tried to do some changes and some zoning and some changes. I want to thank the mayor. He and I had several conversations about that, so he could explain to me some of the concerns that we had up here. And the bills that were negotiated to successfully with the League of Cities and Towns were ready to go. And I would tell you that those bills would not have affected the city of Prescott for two reasons. Number one, it exempted under 50,000, and we're at about 46,000 and change. But number two, many of the things that they asked in that bill for us to do, we're already doing. So, that makes us look good. We're already doing good things to generate types of affordable housing that is necessary. However, at the 11th hour, there were some members in the Senate, including the President of the Senate, who did not like the negotiated settlement, and they ran a separate bill, which was new language and something that the League had not negotiated for, and something that we talked about our opposition to, and that bill failed on the floor of the Senate 11-19. Affordable housing is going to continue to be a subject that is going to come up at the legislature for the next couple of years until it is resolved in some way. It's a difficult issue because there's a difference between creating the opportunities for affordable housing in a community that's got millions of people like the city of Phoenix, or 500,000 people like the city of Tucson, and cities that have populations that are in the roughly 50,000, and then cities that are even smaller than that. So it's going to be an issue. It's something that we participate through the League of Cities and Towns on. Tyler attends meetings on that regularly, and I believe that it will be back next year. So with that, Mayor, I hoping that they do the third thing. The two, remember I said they were coming back with three things. One is governor nominations, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. Secondly is Prop 400. I know that there are some back channels for those of you who read the Yellow Sheet or the news service. You'll have seen my name prominently yesterday talking about that. And yes, I did tell him he could use my name. You get to my age with the number of years I've spent down there, I can kind of get away with commenting on anything. But there are some back channel negotiations going on. What'll happen, I don't know. Hopefully there will be a resolution, because I'd like to see it resolved, because it has kind of cast a pall over the session trying to get that done. And then the last thing that they need to do is sine die. And hopefully they will do that on the 31st, if not the next day, so that we can get back to regular session and regular order and so on. If they do decide that they want to go to a year-round legislature, that is an option. It's a bad option. I will tell you, it's a bad option. I'm speaking as a lobbyist and a citizen. If you'll remember Ben Franklin's famous "No man's life, liberty, and property is safe when the legislature is in session." And I would suggest to you that being in year-round session is not a great thing to do. However, it would also mean they'd have to change the whole structure of the Arizona legislature. They'd have to change the limitation on the number of bills and the deadlines for bills to be introduced, and the deadlines for committee hearings, and so on and so forth. And I think that is something they don't want to bite off. I really don't. I think they like staying in session as a control from a partisan standpoint, the Republican legislature and a Democratic governor, and I get that, I understand that, but I don't think that going to year-round is in our best interest. And with that, Mayor, thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure to represent this city, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Barry. So has the residential rental tax actually been signed and included? So it's still pending,
no,
technically.
It's being held by the speaker from being transmitted to the governor because they want it to be signed. And she had committed to sign it, but that was part of a whole budget negotiation, and I think in her mind it included Prop 400, which fell apart. They don't want to transmit it to her because they're afraid if they do, she'll veto it because Prop 400 didn't go through. So that's why I said earlier, I'm not sure what's going to happen. My best guess is, unfortunately, it will wind up becoming law.
And when is it scheduled to go into effect? Isn't it like a 2-year
January
delay or
1st,
something?
2025, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So you've got it didn't have an emergency clause on it. That wouldn't make any difference, but you'd have essentially 18 months. Is that right? 18 months before it would go into effect.
Okay, Mark, you can start working on that now.
Yeah. A budget and a half cycle, I think, is what we're talking about, or 2 budget cycles. So it's good. Any other questions?
Councilman Tenney.
Thank you, Barry. We appreciate your presentation today and the work that you've done on our behalf throughout the session. A couple of things. First of all, it's useful to know that you feel that it's likely that the residential rental tax will go through that, and the time frame we were aware of, that gives us 18 months to either raise other taxes by $1 million or lower services by $1 million here in Prescott. So we'll start getting ready for one of the two of those. Also, it's interesting to me to hear you speculate that we might see signage as early as June 31st. If you were a betting man, what odds would you put on that?
Well, I'm not a betting man, but I will tell you that give or take a day or two, I think that's likely to happen. Of course, I also thought they were going to sine die on June 12th, and I was wrong on that, which is why I'm not a betting man. So I would also tell you that that does not foreclose the possibility that if there is not a resolution on Prop 400, that the governor might call them into special session at some point in time just for that issue or any other issues that are still outstanding they want to take into consideration.
Councilwoman Cantelmi.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Barry. I had a question about
Good
the 5-minute response time.
Yes.
If that does pass, and it sounds like it's gotten a little bit of traction, are they also going to help us build maybe a few more fire stations and police stations?
Yeah, Mayor Good, council member can tell me. I will tell you that that was part of my testimony when I testified against this bill, not once but twice. And I said to them, look, you want us to do certain things, then fine, you're going to have to fund it. You can't do an unfunded mandate. You can't tell us to get there in 5 minutes with a truck when the best way to get there in 5 minutes is with a fleet of helicopters and other type of advanced transportation. I would suggest to you that 5-minute response time bill in and of itself probably will not come back. I would suggest, however, that a study committee or some other study methodology to look at what we can do to improve response times statewide. And again, as I mentioned before, and I said it with regard to housing, I'll say it with regard to response times. Different cities have different exigencies that make it easier to get a faster response time or more difficult. Some of them are topographical. Some of them is traffic. Some of them are other things. So I think they'll continue to look at opportunities. But even in the study committee, they put the right people on there. They were talking about having actual police chiefs from a variety of cities around the state to serve on those. But I'm not sure I see the bill mandating 5-minute response times coming back next year.
Well, I just wanted to point out that if for some reason, I think we will all desire a 5-minute response time, but the reality is that between, $10 to $15 million a station, that would be a tough nut to crack up here.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate
we enjoy
the
your
opportunity.
trip up here, and your family will enjoy our courthouse plaza and all the wonderful opportunities to be up here at 20 degrees cooler than Phoenix.
Touche. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the council.
All right, we'll move on to item 11B.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is a discussion and action on the disbursement of opioid funds. I will have Finance Director Mark Woodfill and our Police Chief, Amy Bonney, I believe. We're planning to speak a little bit on this, and this is to speak on the funds that the city received as part of the distribution for the opioid settlement funds, and to talk a little bit about how there some requests from the county and how these funds can be used. So, is it going to be Mark first? All right.
All right, I'm going to preface this issue since I spoke to the county along with all the other municipalities when these funds were originally being proposed. We asked the county to take into consideration the extreme impact that these opioid crisis problems created in the city of Prescott with all of the sober living homes and all of the people that were involved in those programs that failed and ended up on the streets, creating a tremendous amount of impact on our police and fire response, and asked for a consideration of the impact, not necessarily just the population. But they decided to apportion these funds based upon population alone. And clearly, the city of Prescott's impact was far, far, far above any of the other smaller communities that had virtually no measurable impact on police or fire response. So with that said, I said the city of Prescott will take the full allocation to our city and allow our police and fire departments to utilize those funds to mitigate the impacts that we've seen over time. So as far as I'm concerned, PANT has already received our allocation because the way they gave it went to other municipalities who then contributed it to PANT. So I'll rely on our fire chief and our police chief to discuss what their recommendation is for the remaining funds to be used and how best to use them.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark Woodfill, Budget and Finance Director. Yeah, on my comments will just be about the dollar amounts. We currently have about $168,000 setting in the fund from this settlements. $68,000 was the first year. Around $100,000 was the second year. We've received the 2 years. County just distributed those to us not too long ago. We've been talking to the county. County has received the distribution. County Health Department is what this runs through. They've received the distribution for 2024. They haven't released the numbers yet, so I don't know the exact number. It'll probably be around that 100,000 in 2024. With that, I'd put it back to the police chief.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. Amy Bonney, Police Chief. So when we first got these funds, we really started looking at how we could best use them within our community. And I'll tell you that PANT, just a short rundown of how they are funded. It is funded through a variety of different methods, one of them primarily being in the past RICO funds. So funds that we would use, the county would get from drug seizures and sales of seized assets. Recent law has created a genuine strain in that fund because we have to wait a much longer period of time till the case is adjudicated to even try to get those funds. And so it's created a giant strain on the PANT budget, in addition to some state funding questions that they get through their, the ACJC funding and grants. There's a significant shortfall in the PANT funds. So we looked at it as a PANT board. I'm a member of the PANT board, and really looked at how we could creatively fund that group, because we all recognize that in addition to the very important work they do with narcotics, they also help keep all of our communities safe, regionally, and working on some big things internationally as well. And so pretty much every municipality has agreed to contribute a portion or all of their funds. Everybody's done it a little bit differently. And when we looked at the funds that we have and what we would like to use them for, this seemed like a worthy contribution towards a cause that is important to all of us regionally. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have anything specific.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess my question is, who is making, are you the person that's making the recommendation that we give this money to PANT? Is this coming from the police department or from the legal department? Who's making this recommendation that we donate these funds from city to PANT?
Okay. I would say that this is the staff recommendation based upon conversations that the police chief has had. And remember, this was $168,000. I think this request is to send over roughly $52,000, $52,500, and then we'd still have a remaining $115,000 that we would continue to hold and use if we have programs or opportunities for us to use that. There's very specific use of the funds. You can only use it for certain things. So we want to ensure that we have the opportunity to do that if we need to, but we're just sending a portion of that back, not the full amount.
So I'd like to ask you then, Chief Bonney, are you comfortable with this request to
Absolutely. In fact, we
You're
just
in
had
favor.
a PANT meeting this morning, and we're talking about funding, and there's still some work that we need to do at the state level where some allocations that were supposed to come our way have not yet been distributed, so we need to kind of find out why and see if that's going to be a continued shortfall as well. So absolutely, the group still needs the support. They still need to continue to fund the important work that they do.
Any other comments or concerns? Yes. Well, I think, okay, Clark Tenney.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. I know we've had some discussion about this. We had a public study session about this some months ago about the best use for the funds as they came in. And Mayor, I totally appreciate your point of view. There's a lot of validity to what you said and the way that you're approaching this. That said, when our city manager and police chief, in conjunction with others who have looked at this, make a recommendation for how to use an initial allocation of this to PAMP, that means a lot to me. So you'll have my support on that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I hope no one takes my comments out of context. Partners Against Narcotic Trafficking do great work. They produced some very monumental enforcement activity events, and we want to make sure they continue to be funded and functional so they can support your efforts here in the city. So with that said, I'll take your recommendations to heart, and we'll move forward with a motion here, I think. Do we have any public comment?
We do not, Mayor.
So I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we appropriate $52,507.12 to Partners Against Narcotics Trafficking.
Second.
The second. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, the motion carries 6-0. We'll move on to item 11C then.
Thank you, Mayor. This will be the adoption of ordinance number 2023-1833, an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, presenting to the voters of Prescott proposed charter amendments at the November 7th, 2023 general election, and adoption of resolution number 2023-1852 related to the November 7th, 2023 general election. As you're all aware, this is the final step in approving the 13 proposed charter amendments that have been presented to you over the course of 2 study sessions. The Charter Review Commission did convene following the June 13th meeting and took into account the feedback that council provided to make a couple of minor revisions to the sections related to lease with option to purchase, as well as qualifications for citizens to run for council. Those are included in your agenda packet. Adopting the ordinance and resolution will allow my office to move forward with putting everything together for the November 7th general election and placing the proposed amendments on the ballot. So we're available to answer any questions that you all might have.
Do we have any questions or comments? I know we've received a series of updates from the Charter Amendment Committee and the chairman there going over the details on this. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question. There was, and I'm trying to get through the packet to find it, but I don't have it in front of me. But there was one of the amendments dealing with petitions, and we had quite a bit of back and forth on that. And I had a general question. Ironically, the last time we discussed that, we then, in the subsequent voting session, had a petition come forward. Councilman Tenney's helping me out. Proposition 462. Thank you. 462. So we had 2 petitions, as I recall, come forward in the voting session. And I asked this question to the city manager, but I guess my question to maybe legal and the city clerk's office as well is, has that the need to get back in 30 days created an undue burden on your staff and time in this situation? Because, I mean, now we have, prior to the discussion we had, Councilman Sushka, I think, said that the last one he had dealt with was the AAD decision, or the contemplation of that annexation. So I'm just curious, City Manager, obviously you can speak to it too. I just curious about you guys, your experience on those two petitions.
And I would just say on those two petitions, I don't think the 30 days is problematic. We'll have it before you next meeting, but it didn't require a whole lot of study either. So I think while those two petitions didn't bring up the problematic issues with a 30-day, other petitions could.
What Joe said. That's right. I think it depends very much on the context of the petition. What the member of the public is asking for, how much legwork staff has to do in order to prepare information to be provided to all of you. These two petitions had, some pretty detailed information included within them. That's not always the case.
Sure.
And they're also just going to simply require some information from staff to be presented to you with regard to what our processes look like related to those two matters that the citizens are concerned about, and then feedback from them, particularly following staff's presentations as well. So it's a little bit easier for us to reroute that and get it back to you all in 30 days. Something that's, more complex would certainly take longer, and, maybe require more time.
And I appreciate that insight. I guess my other question about this would be, Joe, from a legal standpoint, when it says that we're required to do some sort of action on those petitions, is punting, for lack of a better metaphor, is punting an option where we say, we don't have enough time to have suss this out? Our action is that we're going to push this out to discuss it at a subsequent voting meeting. I'm just curious.
I think that would meet the requirement of action, that it would be brought to this council and that you take some sort of action. If the action is no, not right now, but we want to have it come before us again, that's an action.
Okay, and then, sorry, one last question, because this came up in the conversations we had in study session as well. Someone brought up the concept that you could have a noisome citizen kind of continually bring up the same item over and over again through the petition process, essentially abusing that process. And I want to confirm my understanding of what you had kind of said, is that we could action on that by putting it into the consent agenda, for instance, and saying, we've discussed this item at length and we're not going to go forward with it, or this item doesn't apply. Is that still a legal remedy that exists if we did have a noisome constituent that was continually bringing up the same issue over and over again?
I do think that would be an appropriate action, or an action that could be taken by council, which is to say, if you saw the same sort of petitions, direct staff to put it on consent agenda. Consent agenda is action like anything else. So I think it could be one possible alternative that was just kind of brought up in council.
So I will say, based on the responses I've heard from the three of you today, I have real questions in my mind about the necessity of this amendment.
Well, I'm not sure that you've explained your concerns.
I don't think it's necessary. I think 30 days sounds like it's an appropriate amount of time to either decide to move forward, as we're going to move forward on these two petitions that came before us on the last voting session, which, the city attorney and the city clerk have indicated that they were able to action on it. And I guess I worry about being heavy-handed in alienating people in the process of petitioning government. It's not something that is ever going to light my fire and make me super excited. So I have reservations about 30 days, and I guess part of it is in knowing the historical context of why this was put into our charter this way, it was so that council could be held accountable. And I think in both the cases that recently happened and the AED case, there's real concerns, and it's a viable method for people to do that. And I don't know that putting a 60-day constraint on it, I'm not convinced that if it's the two major concerns I would have is that staff couldn't appropriately get council up to speed on that. And it sounds like we have the remedy in this situation that if that's the case, they could bring it to us and say, we don't have enough information for you on this. And we could direct them, okay, put it forward another, till the next voting session, and we will, after you've gained more information, to advise us on this.
Well, that may be an opportunity, but just think about it. If you're on vacation and a public petition is brought to a voting meeting, and you're on vacation at the next meeting, you come back from vacation, you've got to decide yes, no, or something else on a petition that you haven't even had a chance to review. That's a practical option. I think these two petitions we're looking at were relatively easy to analyze. But if something more complex comes up, I think we ought to respect the public's concern by presenting such a petition and then making sure that the majority of the council has a reasonable amount of time to consider what the petition is asking for. We still would have the ability to move it forward or postpone it or put it on a consent agenda even after that. But it does allow a little bit more time to understand what's being asked and then be able to make a decision on it. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd like to come back and see an AED type of petition dropped in my lap and I've got to make a decision almost the time I get back. Councilman Moore?
And I think to the mayor's point, Pro Tem Mayor Montoya, changing this policy allows us to have up to 60 days, but we can still do it in 30 days. It's just giving us additional time if necessary, but we can still if we can do it in 30 days, we can do it in 30 days. It's not saying that we're going to drag it out to 60 days. I think it's just making an allowance if we need more time for a particularly sensitive or difficult subject.
City Manager.
Just a little bit of context around, I know Joe and Sarah have spoken on it, but I think from a practical standpoint and from a staff standpoint, I understand your concern. And, I think one of the things is when you put a specific, like 30 days, my concern probably primarily with 30 days is that council meetings don't always fall perfectly within 30 day, where you can guarantee you've got. So, that's a little bit of a challenge. It gives you a little bit more flexibility so you're not outside that 30 days. So,
with that point, you've brought me around to it. But
to not have to call a special session, that would be.
I'll just say,
in months when you have five Tuesdays, then you will have more than 30 days between meetings.
That makes sense. I will drop my objection on that alone, but I still have reservation anytime that you extend time for government to respond. It creates a roadblock. So I have hesitancy, but I'll drop my objection because I do understand 30 days is a quick turnaround time.
Well, should we go through each one of these propositions and vote to approve the language as submitted?
I mean, we have it as one. Well, it's one for the ordinance and one for the resolution. But Joe?
No, I think that how you go through it, Mayor, is up to you and council. It can be approved all in one. You've heard in study session twice now the language and had a time to review it. You could approve it in one or approve in one motion or go through it individually. I don't think I would say legally both options are on the table, and I wouldn't want to restrict your discretion on how to go through that.
Well, do we have any comments about what option each one of you would like to see? I mean, if we all agree just to do it in one main vote, we can do it that way. But if you'd like to go through them and just make comments, I'd be happy to entertain that as well. Councilman Moore?
Mayor, maybe we could treat it like a consent agenda, and we could just approve all of them unless somebody wants to pull one item, and then we don't have to go through each one individually.
Mayor.
Councilman Tenney?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree in concept there. If we hadn't had the chance to go over these in depth twice in public meetings, I would absolutely suggest that we do so now. But since we've had a chance to do that, perhaps, at least for my benefit, read over these. I'm trying to remember all the different permutations of this that we had. Sarah, do you have notes in front of you that you could highlight for us the changes that you alluded to that the committee made or suggested between the last time they met with us in our study session and today? That would help me personally, Mayor, if you don't mind to have those highlighted briefly, and then I'd be happy to vote on them en masse unless someone wants to pull one.
Sure. So on the lease with option to purchase, our city attorney recommended removal of the last sentence from the proposed language, which specifically called out that another appraisal would not be required. So the commission agreed to remove that language. And then we also updated language to generally address that all subsections of the sale portion of the charter would apply if the dollar amount was over $4 million, in order to address any potential, like one proposition passes by the voters, one does not. That was discussed during the study session as well, and the commission approved that. As I mentioned, they also addressed the qualifications for an individual to run for council. There was a little bit of concern from all of you with regard to sort of eliminating an option for a person to run for council once they become a registered voter, because they would not have been that for a period of 3 years. So what the I worked with legal, and forgive me, I'm kind of stumbling a little bit here, but that's because I don't have it right in front of me. I'm just kind of weighing it off the top of my head. I worked with legal, and what we did was to address that section. We did a 1, 2, 3 option. So qualified electors must, number 1, be a registered voter, number 2, have been a resident of the city of Prescott for 3 years, and number 3, not hold any other offices, which is not a change. So that then addressed the ability of a younger individual to be able to run for council but still have been a resident for 3 years.
Perfect. It sounds like the things that we brought up as a council in our last study session that were concerns have each been addressed, at least to my memory. I appreciate that a lot.
I think we can probably go ahead and entertain a motion to approve these in bulk. Do we have any public comment on these?
We do not, Mayor.
All right, well then I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 2023-1833.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
And I move to adopt resolution number 2023-1852.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Does that conclude that item?
It does.
Yes, it does.
11D.
Thank you. This next item is the statutory public hearing for the JDWR, North Annexation. And this item is kind of a continuation from the pre-annexation that we started back in May, at the May 23rd meeting. There has been a public hearing open, and today is the close of the public hearing, and then the opening of a 60-day comment period, which is the next step as part of the annexation. So I believe George Worley is here. He's going to provide kind of a quick overview of the process and a request for council to open that public hearing or open that comment period.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the pre-annexation or pre-annexation public hearing. The public hearing is required by statutes. The state statutes set out a very clear stepped process to conduct an annexation. The very first step of that process is the filing of a blank petition. That was done on June 1st. I have a timeline I'll walk through in just a moment and show you each of those steps and what the following steps will be. Just to give some context to the discussion, the annexation that was applied for in the blank petition is shown on the map here. It is north of the current city limit lines. It does not go all the way to the southern boundary of Chino Valley's city limits. There's approximately a half a mile in between. It is north of and bounds on the north edge of the Dignity Health YRMC future hospital campus. There's been quite a bit of discussion about that. There was a lot of discussion during the EVO process about that. And as you can see, it is a relatively large area. It's slightly over 600 acres. The county zoning is RCU 2A. That is a residential zoning, a 2-acre minimum lot size zoning. That will become an issue a little later on in the process, and I'll explain why as we step through it. So again, the process is started with the filing of a blank petition. That was done June 1st. Within the last 10 days of the 30 days following that June 1st date, we have to hold a public hearing. That public hearing is to take public comment on the proposed annexation. It is only a public comment period. No action is required of council today in relation to that public hearing. Once that 30-day period has expired, and that will be June 30th, so anytime following June 30, the applicants can file with us a signed petition. They can file with us a rezoning request and a master plan amendment request. And as I mentioned before, the property being single-family residential zoning does not conform to the land uses or types of land uses that are required under the Deepwell Master Plan. And this is related to Deepwell Ranch's master plan. The annexation process only brings the property into the city and assigns an equivalent city zoning to it, which does not allow for the master plan and does not allow for all of the uses that are incorporated in the master plan. A rezoning to special plan communities, anyone who attended our AVO conversations, multiple conversations, would be familiar with the term SPC, special plan communities, requires the rezoning to that SPC district and then the master plan overlaid with it. So at this future date, following June 30th, the applicants can submit to us a signed petition for annexation with the signatures of at least 51% of the property owners. I believe there's a single property owner of the properties, and any applications for rezoning and master plan amendment. Once that has been done, the city will do a review. We review all projects just like a rezoning request for any other type of zoning. It'll go through a staff review to determine consistency, whether or not utilities are provided, all of the things that normally would affect whether you want to annex and rezone property. And at that point, we would schedule this for a public hearing at our Planning and Zoning Commission. That public hearing at Planning and Zoning would be to discuss the rezoning to SPC and the master plan that would cover that area, whether it's a direct extension of the existing plan that covers Deepwell Ranch, or if the property owner proposes something different, that would be part of this discussion, that discussion. After that, an action by the Planning and Zoning Commission triggers a requirement in the city's charter that says a 60-day public comment period starts with the action by the Planning and Zoning Commission, runs through 60 days to allow public review and comment before council can take any action on the master plan amendment. The charter specifically addresses master plan rather than the annexation itself. So the presumption is large annexations will have master plans. That's almost universally true. So this would require a 60-day period, and then at some point following that 60-day period, doesn't have to be immediately, it would be presented to you for approval of the annexation, a rezoning to SPC, and an amendment of the master plan, along with potentially a few other steps. There may be, in this particular case, there may be an amendment to the development agreement that is existing now in order to allow for some of this. And I think the city attorney can probably talk a little bit more about the master plan amendment as it's related to the DA. Once that happens, because there is a rezoning involved and because there's an annexation involved, there is a 30-day period following council's action where the item could be challenged and placed on a ballot by petition of the voters. So it could be a relatively long process. At this stage, the public hearing today is just to take public comment, which we will record, and we will present that public comment along with any other public comment that we get to the Planning Commission, and then subsequently to City Council following the 60-day period. The charter requires that staff provide a synopsis of all public comment at the end of the 60-day period to Council before you can take action on the requested modification to the master plan. And with that, I will take any questions you may have or turn it over to the city attorney for comment.
Yeah, if I could just address for council and for the record, a little bit of the procedural background of why we're here. So we identified as a city the need to protect the airport in ways additional to what we had in place at the time. And we discussed kind of an AVO, and we've also discussed with Depot Ranch parties possibly amending the master plan or the development agreement. And so the airport proposed a possible solution that would include this annexation and move some of the density and some of the water out of being adjacent directly to the airport up to this area north of the hospital parcel. So it's only proposed at this point, and we're just starting the process. This was, though, a city-initiated process based on our discussions with the Depot Ranch parties. So it's only for public comment at this point, and there's no recommendation from staff or from anywhere else at this point until we go through the steps and unless and until an agreement is reached that resolves those airport-related issues as well.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. This question might be more for Robin, and I know I appreciate Joe explaining for the public's understanding why we're considering this annexation. It's to help protect the airport and move development away from the airport and move it north. But Robin, I have a question. It seems that with the parallel runways that we have, that the runway to the north, when the planes take off, they go west and then they turn north. And wouldn't they be flying right over this as they make their loops over and over and again? And would we be having a similar problem because that's the direction that runway would fly and turn and come back to do their takeoffs and touchdowns?
One of the things that $750,000 grant you approved earlier was the approval of the reimbursement for the noise contours that were created and associated with the forecast that is for 2026. And so I did superimpose the contours over this area to see what the impact would be. And the entire area that you see up there in pink for the 2026 non-noise contours is only affected by the 55 DNL noise contour, not by the higher impact noise contours that we've been discussing in the airport vicinity overlay district. So that's good news. It's also outside the impact zones, except a very tiny corner, which is impact zone 6. So we see it as being a much more favorable location. Will there be some overflight? Yes, we have 320,000 total operations expected for this year. The forecast goes over 400,000 total operations, but that's why we did the future forecast for the noise contours.
Thank you, Robin. And I'm in favor of moving the development away from the airport, but I think it's still important that anybody that buys in that area needs to understand that there's going to be overflight. It's just going to be a part of where they live.
I concur. It is still within the public airport disclosure map, which is required by the state of Arizona. It's still within the airport influence area, which since 2001 has required navigation easements. So all of that area would presumably also be encompassed under the Deep Well Ranch Master Plan chapter that relates to airport, the navigation easements that are required to be signed and produced during the sale process. I do believe as we proceed forward on this, we'll be looking at making sure that we clarify some of the language that talked about when the homeowners get this information so they can be very well informed, because I know that's a concern of the council. It's a concern of ours as well. Is that it?
Okay, any other comments or concerns? I think we can move to public comment now, right? Councilman Shishka.
Thanks, Mayor. Now, George, I know that people are concerned about more houses. There are no more houses that are being granted from the master plan, right?
I should probably answer that. Based on a kind of a pre-annexation agreement that we've agreed to with the Deepwell Ranch parties, any agreement that we would reach would include a provision that no new houses be added, that density from the Deepwell Ranch master plan move that direction as opposed to adding more houses or more water use. So it'll be a static, no change in terms of the amount of houses and the amount of water to be used.
Okay, I just wanted to, run interference on the fact that the urban legend is going to be, oh my gosh, they're going to have so many more houses. That's not the way it's going to be.
Correct. There wouldn't be more houses. It would just be a transfer in location.
Thank you.
All right, so Connie, do you have a question? No. All right, so we can move to public comment at this time.
Stephen Polk.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you. My name is Stephen Polk. I'm the attorney for James Deepwell Ranch and the James Family Foundation. Now, the city is initiating this annexation, so I think the question is why. I think it's been explained, but I'll go over it again. And the answer is airport protection. Now, airport protection was in the newspaper today. The city has been working on it for over a year now publicly, and I'll tell you behind the scenes for even longer than that. And it's critical for the long-term vitality of our community. So the idea with this annexation is to move future planned housing that's been in the works for over 2 years. There were subdivision plats submitted to the city over 2 years ago to move that housing from just north of the airport to the other side of the YRMC medical campus that is planned for out there. And the idea for this annexation came from the City of Prescott Airport Director, Dr. Robin Sabata. And I'll tell you, I think it's a really good part of the solution to airport protection. To address Councilman Moore's concern, the Deepwell Ranch Master Plan includes a required navigation easement, required homeowner disclosures, required building materials to mitigate the effects of airport noise. So all those will get included when this property, if this property is annexed and added to the Deepwell Ranch Master Plan. It's important for the public and for council members to know that this annexation will not add any additional houses. The master plan right now for Deepwell Ranch allows 10,500 homes. After this annexation, if it occurs and is added to the master plan, the maximum homes will be 10,500. And the water rights associated with those homes are already in place. Deepwell Ranch Master Plan has vested water rights for all 10,500 homes, so that won't change. There won't be an increased burden on the city for water associated with this annexation. Let's see, the city's position is that this annexation, it's needed for airport protection. It's for two reasons. It's for safety and noise. The first issue is safety. There was a mapping error in the airport planning documents that occurred many years ago. It was by a city consultant, and it was incorporated into the airport planning documents. And so this got incorporated into the Deepwell Ranch Master Plan ultimately. And this mapping error drew the aircraft impact zones short. And so where this planned housing was planned for, that's been in the works for 2 years, it's within this mapping error. And so one need to move the housing out of this is because now the city's discovered that it's sitting within an aircraft impact zone where previously it was believed to be outside of the zone. And the second reason is for noise. Now the FAA provides land use compatibility guidelines for cities. And really the FAA says airplanes are noisy and living close to the airport and that noise does have health effects. This is what the city and the airport director, that's what they'll tell the public. When the Deepwell Ranch Master Plan was adopted, the city used the FAA noise model it had available at the time. But the thing about the FAA noise model is it's designed for normal airports where planes take off and then they go somewhere. They fly in a straight line away from the airport. That's not what we have at Prescott Regional Airport. We have a pilot training airport. 75% of our flight traffic is Embry-Riddle training planes. So they take off and they do traffic patterns. They fly those circles that the airport director was talking about. And so the city last year got a new noise mapping study using the best available noise data. And what you found out was the north side of the airport is a lot noisier than what was previously believed. That was previously shown under the old noise data that we used for the Deepwell Ranch Master Plan. And so the city will tell you it needs to move this housing away from the north side of the airport for the noise reason and the FAA land compatibility guidelines as well. But just prohibiting housing on the north side of the airport there is problematic. And it's problematic for two reasons. The first one is there's vested private property rights involved, and there's been years of planning and years of money expended on that. And the second issue is that the Yavapai Regional Medical Center, they have a planned campus right there. We can see it up on the map right now. It's that dark red. And it's 180 acres, and they've planned this and acquired this property. It was part gift, part purchase from Deepwell Ranch. But YRMC's planning this as a medical campus to serve the projected future needs of North Prescott, Chino Valley, Paulden, and surrounding areas. But the thing is, you'll hear from a representative of Yavapai Regional Medical Center today that the thing is they need the rooftops around this campus in order to support the infrastructure and the demands for this campus. And so if the city were to just prohibit housing up here, it would kill this medical campus, and there would be no medical campus for the harm of the community. So I truly believe this annexation is needed to maintain the plans for YRMC and for the benefit of our community up there. Let's see, the airport vicinity overlay and airport protection, it's a highly complicated issue. So more work is needed on a global solution for this, a global resolution, but the annexation is a key and critical part of that. And so it's important to remember there's no additional housing that'll be added and no additional water required for that housing. And so for these reasons, James Deepwell Ranch supports this annexation. Thank you. I'm available for any questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Jonathan, is it Millett?
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Millett, and I am the attorney for Dignity Health, Yavapai Regional Medical Center. And as Mr. Polk has indicated, this is important. The annexation or any development around the campus is necessary, and that's because we need neighbors to partner with to bring up the utilities and the roads and to put in a roundabout. All of those are very expensive. And eventually, to actually build the campus, we'll actually need 2 access points. And so we need neighbors to be able to help pay for those things. Without neighbors, and by neighbors I mean people that will be the other neighboring property owners that will actually pay for that development, then those plans will need to be postponed. I wouldn't say indefinitely, but it would need to be put out sometime, because essentially to break ground on one building, it would cost tens of millions of dollars just to be able to put in what is necessary. Without partners, it's even more expensive. We support the proposed annexation, and our position hasn't changed on the proposed aviation overlay district. We continue to be opposed to it, and we continue to respectfully request that the hospital's campus property be exempted from it because of the existing development agreement. And as to the plans for the development of the campus, we'd like to start off with, we don't have the first building plan, but the YRMC is very excited to be able to open this up and start working on it. Eventually, it'll start off with medical office buildings and outpatient services. The hospital's actually planned as part of phase 3. And so it will be some time for that to happen, and part of that is actually what Mr. Polk indicated. We need enough homes to justify that additional hospital up there, just as it took time to be able to put in YRMC's East Campus Hospital in Prescott Valley, and we needed the growth and the development in Prescott Valley to be able to justify that. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Jonathan.
Dave Humphrey.
Excuse me while I bring this down to my height. I'm just a resident here, but I've lived around 15 places since I got out of college. And every one of them that took in annexation, I call it LEAP annexation, as part of their growth plan, got into a mess eventually. There were so many competing interests, inside interests. It's hard to control once it gets started. Now, I agree that residential areas should get away from the airport. The growth of the airport never should have been there. I'm also concerned about these commitments now being overturned by a future council. I mean, we went through a hell of a bad 4 years before the current mayor, with untethered growth. And we don't want to see that again. And other than that, I've got no technical knowledge with regards to this stuff. But increased pumping is going to be required unless, did I hear two acres per home? No.
No, that's just the current zoning in the county. That would not be the case.
Thank you. Okay, so it'll be about the same density. I don't know where the water will come from, if it'll be piped up from current city limits or what. That may not be a big deal, but it's expensive. The road will have to grow. It's expensive. We already have too much traffic. I think you need to wrap this kind of thing into an overall growth plan that limits the amount of growth. Now, if you want a model, go to Boulder, Colorado. They did an incredible job of it starting in 1975. And I lived there for 24 years. And it was a well-managed city. And I would really like it if we get rid of this Maricopa County style growth in Yavapai County. Thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
Yeah.
No action.
They don't have to move to close public.
So we just move to close the public hearing. So I'll entertain a motion for that.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving to item 11E.
Yes, item 11E, this is a city contract with Fan Contracting for some roadway reconstruction and realignment improvements in the Pulliam and Douglas roadway area. And we have Tim here, Tim Sherwood, our capital projects manager, to give us an overview.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tim Sherwood, Capital Program Manager, Public Works. As you see on the map behind you, this project contains Pulliam and Douglas Drive east of Willow Lake Road, extending to the Demers and Nolte intersection. Work includes pavement removal and replacement, some minor roadway realignment, storm drain upgrades, as well as some curb and gutter replacements. This road was identified in our overall 5-year plan for road replacement, and it developed into a little bit larger project as we got into it. We did a public meeting in December of 2022 when we completed the 90% plans to invite the residents of the area to see what the project entailed. We got pretty good feedback from that. The project was advertised on April 23rd and 30th of this year, and on May 24th, 2023, we received 3 bids. Public Works is recommending the award of the low bid to Fan Contracting in the amount of $1,571,677.75. The engineer's estimate for the project was $1,377,000, $369. Staff has received written confirmation of the bid from Fan Contracting. Verification of license, bonding, references, and past performance of previous municipal projects have been completed and deemed satisfactory. City standard construction contract will be used for the project, and the project is budgeted in FY24 from the Streets Fund. And with that, I will be happy to entertain any questions.
Councilman Moore.
Quick question. Talks about driveway tie-ins and reconfiguration of curb and gutter, but doesn't say anything about sidewalks. Will this now have sidewalks?
We looked into this, Councilman Moore. The right-of-way, I'm going to use a real technical term here, the right-of-way is wonky. It is, I mean, we actually had to do a little bit of right-of-way acquisition just to make the road. We actually had road going through private property in a couple locations on this project, so we acquired the right-of-way from those property owners. There just wasn't enough room to do so, as much as we'd like to. APS has got some monster power poles along the roadside there. To relocate those would be very problematic.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm really happy this is finally getting done. I'll just say I was talking to Councilman Tenney, and I think this is a road that's probably in probably the lowest grade of road condition we have in our community. And I can see my office on your map. So I drive this road probably every single day. And some days I ride it on my bike, and I'll tell you what, it is not fun on a bike. So I'm glad to see this is getting done.
Councilman Tenney.
I share that opinion. I live relatively nearby. I drive this road frequently, and for the traffic this gets, I'm reasonably confident we don't have a road in worse shape in the entire city, and that's probably been the case for a year or more, so or a couple of years perhaps, even before the utility work that they did recently. Obviously, that's degraded things a bit. So I'm really excited to see this getting done. $1.5 million is a lot of money, but that's about $2 for every complaint I've made about this road in the last 5 years. So it works out pretty good, the math.
All right, do we have any public comment?
We do not, Mayor.
All right, unless anybody has any other questions or concerns, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2023-221.
Second.
And a motion is second. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll go to item 11F.
All right. Item 11F. Thank you, Mayor. This item is the renewal of the transportation services contract with Lifeline Ambulance for medical transportation services. A contractual relationship of this type is critical for maintaining our local control over our EMS system. And I have Chief Dewar here to talk about the updated performance expectations and contractual terms for this particular item.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, as City Manager Gregory stated, we're here to go over the updated agreement with Lifeline for pre-hospital transportation. Just some background. In 2021, we established a contract with Lifeline to help us improve the coordination of EMS response, and also that was in line with our fire service accreditation efforts to help us better coordinate our pre-hospital care system. The new contract, it has one particular feature that I want to call out in it. That is, we're also focusing on patient outcomes and customer service, in addition to the response time metrics that are in the contract, but Lifeline is also beholden to under their certificate of need with DHS. The contract, in this case, applies only to the city limits of Prescott. As you know, that there's multiple CON holders here in the area. The contract that you're considering today for approval is simply for the city limits. In addition, some changes that we've made in this contract. This is for a 3 one-year term contract with annual continuance options 30 days before the end of each one of those terms. We've clarified the automatic vehicle location requirements, help us better unit track and do closest unit dispatching. AMR has agreed to increase the ALS, Advanced Life Support ambulances in the city 24/7 by one, and that ambulance will be limited on its use for interfacility transfers, and we're hoping that helps us with system reliability. We're also hoping to establish better exchange of medical supplies with Lifeline that can help save us money as well as simplify supply management on our side. And there's a schedule in the contract that's in front of you for consideration that outlines what those supplies might be. The fee schedule for us having a paramedic ride in with them has also been reworked. We worked on that quite extensively and also proposed some of these already in a courtesy review to DHS, and DHS has given us preliminary approval. And then there's also exit clauses for the city if there's any lack of improvement in both staffing as well as response performance, and that's very important for us so that we have a good, productive relationship between the two parties. Next steps is the implementation of the new contract initiatives. There's quite a few things that we're looking forward to working with Lifeline. But before we get into that, once you all approve, if that's the direction you choose, we'll then have to forward that contract to the Department of Health and Human Services in Phoenix for their approval as well. So it's going to take still a little bit longer for us to get through that part of the process. We're also going to continue to focus on EMS performance across the system. The city manager and I have both spoken at length that we're really interested in high quality patient care and high quality patient outcomes. That is something that we're going to continue to focus on, and response times to us are one of those components, but it's not the only piece of the story. And then the other thing that we want to do, and John Valentine is here, who's the operations director, the regional director for Lifeline. We really want to see us expand further into EMD to help us prioritize system resources, particularly on the low acuity side of our medical response care system. And that's basically the overview. Do you have any questions for me?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Dura, I just have a quick question. You mentioned that if we approve this, it'll go to DHS for approval. Is there any reason they would say no to this contract?
So one of the things that we've already done, as I mentioned, is we offered the contract in basically 95% format to DHS for what they call a courtesy review, and that's where they can flag any issues that they feel we need to address. We don't anticipate that being an issue, but we just spoke actually at the beginning of this that there is a potential. And if you're all right with it, I'd invite John Valentine maybe to speak to that, since he's the CON holder. I'm basically opining on his CON rather than the other way around. So.
Come on up, John.
Mayor and Council, my name is John Valentine. I'm the Regional Director for Lifeline Ambulance. Chief Dura is correct. We did a courtesy review to hopefully circumvent any questions the Bureau may have with the contract. As the Bureau goes through changes and sometimes the wording can change, or there's additional legislation that goes through that can change some of the wording when they look at contracts. So we did that courtesy review some time back. I don't anticipate any potentials, but we should, if there are, they will be probably small. Unfortunately, it has to go back through the same process again, which we have had conversations with DHS about doing their review prior to going to council and going to wet ink signatures on both sides, but that's kind of where we're at.
Thanks for the clarity. I appreciate that.
Any other questions or concerns? I know with the previous reference on one of those legislative bills requiring a 5-minute response time, even being able to get 10 or 15 minutes here in a reliable response time seems to be a little difficult. So that's just contractually obligated. And of course, you can do better than that, certainly. How are you performing now relative to these expected percentages?
Look, I think we work diligently both with the chief, the new chief, as well as the old chief and staff to work through any issues this is. And I think somebody said it earlier, this is a difficult city to get around, especially with larger apparatus such as an ambulance or a fire truck. So we consistently work with the chief every month to review our response times, which we're in compliance with. Also, once we sign a contract with the municipality, the state also holds us to those response times, sole and separate of our CON response times. So I think that's why we're here today.
Any other questions or concerns? All right, we'll move on to entertaining a motion here, I think.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2023-205.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor and council, thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item 11G, public hearing for the fiscal year 2024 budget expenditure limitation and tax levy.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a multi-pronged sort of stepped approach to approving the overall budget for fiscal year 2024. And we have Mark Woodfill here to make sure that we don't mix up what we're doing today.
Thank you, Manager Gregory. Mayor and Council, Mark Woodfill, Budget and Finance Director. Exciting day. This is close to the last action to finish the 2024 budget. Up on the screen right now, I have the process that we've gone through for the last 6 months, starting in November, along with the various council workshops we had through May. We've done the publishing of the truth and taxation notices as requested by council. Tentative budget was adopted on the 13th of June and published in the paper twice, once a week for 2 weeks as required. The budget as presented at all those various steps includes this $258,135,559, which is an 8% reduction from the prior year. However, most of that is just because of a change in contingencies as well as a reduction in capital projects, which fluctuate up and down over the years. With that, what we're here today for is the final, or the public hearing, not only on the 24 budget, but also the 24 alternative expenditure limitation, as we are a home rule city, approved by the voters, and also the property tax levy is part of the public hearing. And with that, once the public hearing is completed, we will need to do a roll call vote on continuing the property tax. And after that, there will be a special meeting called. This meeting will be suspended, I guess, and we'll call a special meeting to consider the actual budget, which includes several the items listed above. With that, I'd be happy to go into any more detail, or we could go back through the 80-slide deck from the last workshop. I got nothing else going.
Councilman Moore.
Mark, I just have one quick question. Gwen sent out an email this week that they had gotten a $3 million grant, and you had a budget for only $3 million. So can we not get any more grants because if it's not in the budget, we can't spend it?
I believe we had a contingency for the $3 million, but we also have the $11 million contingency as well as other grants that will be in there. And the grant that Gwen was referring to was WIFA grant for the water meter replacement, which is actually the grants that we list up there is the $3 million contingency are governmental. So that grant will technically be in the water fund, which is part of the capital project. So there is capacity for it. Yeah.
Well, after we heard from Barry Aarons saying that it's pretty certain that the loss of the residential rental tax is going to be coming up a year and a half from now. And with the very modest additional primary property tax we're proposing here may make a small down payment on that loss of revenue. What is your estimated revenue loss on that?
Excuse me, Mayor. Get all choked up when you start talking about residential rental tax loss. The estimated loss is, I believe, as I recall, about $960,000 in general fund and $960 in the streets fund, which, of course, is problematic. We're trying to put new fire stations in. We have capacity in the general fund related to the retirement of the PSPRS debt. Hopefully that was going to be able to be used to staff new fire stations. Council may have to look at other options. Obviously, staff, city manager and finance staff will start looking at various options as we move towards this far off 18-month time when the tax stops. It will not affect the 24 budget, and it will only halfway affect the following budget. Even the impact in the general fund is not going to be as bad as it's going to be on the streets fund. That's $1 million in the streets fund, and as we drive around our community, I know we all see the need for a lot of street projects. So I'm concerned about it, but we will come up with a solution. We will figure out how to prioritize what we have and
well,
move
we just
forward.
saw the Pulliam Lane project at 1.5 plus million.
That project.
Yeah.
That's one relatively short road.
Yeah.
So 960,000 out of that fund certainly is painful. And if you combine those two to 1.92 million,
Yep.
then we get a $238,000 increase in primary property tax. That's about a 12% down payment.
Yeah, for sure. In a way, it will not be the total solution, but we,
Indeed.
as we go through the 25 budget, we will be bringing solutions forward.
Well, I think that just reinforces the whole justification that we brought forward with this primary property tax, because we need to have more of a reliable income stream than what happens down in the legislature, and they decide to step into our budget and our ability to manage our city and take away those options from us without any compensating revenue. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I share your concern, Mark, with the impact to streets, and frankly, I think it's the worst of both worlds, right? It's streets and it's public safety, in my mind, because a big part of one of the things I appreciated that was educational for both council and the general public was seeing how much certain departments take in from the general fund as their funding mechanism for the department, and with police and fire, it's like. It's all of it, basically. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge amount. And so when Barry Aarons was up here earlier, I did the math based on what I've talked to the fire chief about in terms of the cost of firefighters. They took down 13 firefighters out of our general fund, and that's about what it takes to staff a new fire station. And so, I mean, it's just unfortunate that the state legislature cares about protecting local government, except when it comes to local cities. But I appreciate that. In my mind, what this, I don't like the idea of raising taxes. It makes me not feel happy. But I do know that we have to be responsible with how we move forward. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from people, and I've listened to it, and I appreciate where people are coming from with it. But unfortunately, we have an obligation to keep primary services like streets, like water, like public safety, and the $283,000 or whatever it's going to be isn't gonna. It'll barely make a down payment, to the mayor's point, but at least it's something we can do to move the needle forward.
No other questions or concerns. Councilman Tenney, thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I probably share the opinion of maybe everybody in this room that I don't want to see taxes be raised. However, and we've got folks in our community who say pithy things like growth should pay for growth, and in general that's true. But what we're looking at in terms of increased cost to the city is not solely or even largely due to growth in many cases. Things just cost more. Who would have thought that Mayor's right, that stretch of road, we're probably talking about 150 meters, something like that, and it's going to cost us $1.57 million to redo the surface of that. The funding's got to come from someplace. The legislature is taken away from us instead of helping us out in that respect, and we're really looking at a moderate amount here. Can you remind me roughly the amount per year that a typical homeowner in Prescott is looking at having their property taxes increased as a result of?
And again, I put this graph up from the workshop. It looked like, as I recall, about $13 a year for a $400,000 house.
Super. So since the median home price in Prescott is just over $600,000, a typical person's paying $18 a year. Is that what?
Yeah, just because the house costs $600 doesn't mean it's assessed by the county.
Okay, fair enough.
Most of them are a $600,000 house would be probably
substantially
closer
lower.
to
Gotcha.
$400.
Okay, I appreciate that. So we're looking at really a very, very moderate amount, and again, it doesn't add to our coffers in the city in a substantial way, but we can't just give up and say, well, I guess we're not going to do anything. I feel like we run a pretty lean machine here in general, so it's not like we can just cut the fat out of the city manager's office or something like that. Certainly not from the finance department. And revenue for services that are demanded does need to come from someplace. I have a hard time if I meet a person who says I want lower taxes, but I want the same level of services or a higher level of services, with those services becoming more expensive all the time.
And great points, Councilman. And also, while we have this graph up, if you're in the county, if you're in Prescott Valley, if you're in Chino Valley, you're paying almost twice the property tax rate on your properties. They might not assess it the same, but it's significant. And here it's just related to the fire districts. You can see we charge $101 on a $400,000 house. They charge $1,100 on a $400,000 house.
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting that for us again. And it's the case with sales taxes as well. We have the lowest sales taxes in the area, lowest property taxes in the area, lowest school district taxes in the area, and the highest levels of service in the area, in my mind. Just with the airport alone that we're paying for that our municipalities are not, that there's some key differences between what we have to pay for and what neighboring communities need to, and yet our taxes are among the lowest. So I think a look at a moderate increase in property taxes is warranted. It's not my favorite thing to do, but
it's not mine either as a resident. But
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, I'm glad you brought up that distinction between what people think of as their, like, whatever Zillow or Redfin or whoever is telling them what their value is, or even if they've had it appraised recently for a refinance. Can you tell me, because I'm looking at I'm just curious because I'm looking at my house, right? And there's a limited value that they list, and then there's a full cash value in terms of assessed. Do you happen to know? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so if you don't know, that's fine.
Yeah, to explain the property tax system in Arizona is not something for a late night meeting, for sure. It has changed. They used to have a very limited and full cash value, where the limited cash value was limited at how much the assessed value could go up each year. A few years ago, there were changes, and those two numbers are basically coming together. But there is an overall limit at what the assessed value can be increased each year.
So I'm looking at my house, and again, it's just my house, but based on what I understand the value to be from talking to my realtor instead of Zillow, is that it looks like it's maybe a little less than half of what the value of the actual home is. So I think the impact is, for people for the median home value, that $13, it's probably maybe, that's probably not, some folks won't even have that much of an increase necessarily on it if their assessed value is below $400,000.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Cantelmi.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mark, none of us, again, I'm just going to echo what everybody else says. Nobody wants to have more taxes. But it is a step in the right direction because of the deferment we've had over the years in terms of the services and the roads. We've just got to try to play catch up. It's like 2 steps forward and 1 back with the hit with the rental tax. Did you say that was about $900,000 or $9 million?
$900,000.
900, roughly.
960 in the general fund and 960 on the streets fund, which the mayor pointed out is $1,900 or $1.9 million.
Yeah, that's a shame. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Do we have any public comment?
We do, Mayor. The first comment card I have is from Leanna Corbett.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name is Leanna Corbett. I'm a second-generation native of Arizona and a longtime resident of beautiful Prescott. I have my most recent property tax statement in front of me. In 2023, 50% of my property taxes went to Yavapai College and Prescott Unified School District Number 1, also known as PUSD. I have been attending every school board meeting this year. In April, we were presented with the Arizona Auditor General's report that assesses the student achievement success of our PUSD students for the year 2022. Here are the results. In math, 53% of our PUSD students are failing. In English, 47% of our PUSD students are failing.
Ms. Corbett, I'm going to have to interrupt you because this is not the issue we're dealing with. We're dealing with the city's taxes, not PUSD and not Yavapai College.
Okay.
So if you can keep your comments related to our budget, then that's appropriate.
Okay. Now, my property taxes, though, 50% go to Yavapai College and PUSD. So is that appropriate?
No, because they go to those agencies and not to the city of Prescott. So we don't have any impact on their budget, and that's not the subject of this agenda item.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I have anything. I don't. Thank you. Sorry for the mistake.
No worries. Thank you for your participation.
David Humphrey.
I think he left.
Tony Hamer.
Mayor and Council, I really empathize with where you guys are at this point in time. You're between a rock and a hard place. You've inherited a very, very tough situation. We can all see it coming. We don't want to raise taxes, and I'm very much behind that. But at the same time, we don't have a lot of places to go in terms of addressing the issues of the past, which are now with us. We've deferred maintenance on a lot of properties in the city. It's a great shame. The conversation here today talked about having more reliable income streams. Well, that's certainly one way to go, but it's going to take time to get there. And this problem is next year's problem and also the back of this year's problems. A mounting deferment of capital and certainly some basic needs in terms of our city services. To have a new fire station after 25 years is maybe not too much to ask for. So, you know, we can keep kicking the can down the road, but it's going to catch up, and higher taxes are on the way unless we find a way around this problem. The big thing that I don't see in the budget, and I've spoken about this once before as well, is a cost improvement program across all departments in the city. Any organization, any enterprise I have ever been in as a consultant or as an operating manager, you can always find 5%. And 5% of 250 million turns out to be a big number. We really should go after that. I would urge you to put in place immediately cost improvement programs to offset some of the inflation effects you've seen and the deferred capital that you see as well. So that would be my suggestion, that you would look at that as a program to try and solve the issue that we're facing. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you,
all,
Mr.
Mayor.
Hamer.
That's all.
All right. Any other comments or concerns? All right. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. I'll make a motion to approve the property tax levy.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
No, Mayor, I have
Oh,
to.
excuse me,
Sorry,
we
I
gotta
have to
do
do
a
a
roll
roll
call
call vote for that. Hold on one. Mayor Good,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Montoya,
Aye.
Councilwoman Kentelme,
Aye.
Councilman Moore,
Aye.
Councilman Sishka,
Aye.
Councilman Tenney.
Aye.
Thank you. Passes 6-0.
Okay, at this point, I will recess the regular meeting and we'll call a special meeting to order. So the regular meeting is recessed and a special meeting is now being called to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Good, Mayor Pro Tem Montoya,
Still here?
Councilwoman Kentelme,
Here.
Councilman Moore,
Here.
Councilman Sishka,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Tenney,
Yes.
and the record will reflect that Councilmember Roosing is excused from the meeting.
All right, I think the next action is to motion to adopt the resolution and vote. Will that be a roll call or regular?
We do not need a roll call for that. This is for the adoption of a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, determining and adopting final estimates for the proposed expenditures for fiscal year 2024, declaring that the same shall constitute the budget for the city of Prescott for said fiscal year, establishing the expenditure limitation, and approving and updating the job roster for the city of Prescott.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second by Councilman Shishka.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So with that, we'll adjourn the special meeting. And now the regular meeting is reconvened. And now that the regular meeting has been reconvened, I'll adjourn the regular meeting.
Aye.
Good job, Mayor.
Life is a rodeo. All you have to do is stay in the saddle. George Young. So thank you all for coming and enjoy the rest of the evening.